Hi everyone, my name is Paige, and I need to tell you about the worst thing that ever happened to me. Well, maybe not the worst anymore, but it sure felt like it at the time. I had what I thought was a perfect life. Me, my husband David, and our daughter Casey lived in this nice house in the suburbs. David was this successful businessman who made enough money that I only had to work part-time as an accountant. I loved it that way because I could be home when Casey got back from school and we could do homework together. Casey was such a sweet kid back then. She was always laughing and telling me about her day. We'd bake cookies on weekends and watch movies together. David would come home from work and we'd all have dinner as a family. It sounds cheesy, but those were honestly the happiest 15 years of my life. Then one Tuesday morning, David sat me down at the kitchen table with his coffee and said the words that destroyed everything. "Paige, I want a divorce. I met someone else, her name is Jennifer. I'm in love with her." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. "David, we can work this out. We can go to counseling or something." He shook his head. "No, I've already made up my mind, and there's something else you need to know. Casey wants to live with me, Paige. I asked her last night." That's when Casey walked into the kitchen. She looked at me with these cold eyes I'd never seen before. "Mom, I want to live with Dad." "Casey, honey, why? We can talk about this. Dad can give me more opportunities. He's got more money and connections. I want to go to the best college, and Dad can make that happen." I felt like my whole world was crashing down. My husband was leaving me for another woman, and my 14-year-old daughter was choosing him over me because of money. "Sweetheart, we can figure something out. I can work more hours, we can apply for scholarships." Casey just shrugged. "Dad already said he'd handle everything. It's better this way." The divorce went through fast. David had good lawyers, and honestly, I didn't fight him much. I was too heartbroken to care about the money or the house. All I wanted was to keep seeing Casey, but she made it clear that wasn't really what she wanted. I ended up renting this tiny apartment across town. It was furnished with cheap furniture and the walls were thin, so I could hear my neighbors fighting all the time. I'd lie awake at night crying and listening to other people's problems. David wasted no time moving Jennifer into our old house. She was this blonde woman who was probably 10 years younger than me. I saw her once when I went to pick up the rest of my stuff, and she acted like she owned the place already. The worst part was paying child support. I know that sounds backwards, but it killed me every month to write that check. Not because of the money, but because it reminded me that I was now just a financial obligation to my own daughter. Casey would visit me maybe once every 3 or 4 months, and even then she'd only stay for a couple hours. She'd sit on my couch looking bored and checking her phone the whole time. But somehow, life kept going. 2 years after the divorce, I met Marcus at a work conference. He was this successful businessman who owned several companies, way richer than David ever was. The crazy thing was, he actually liked me for who I was, not what I could do for him. Marcus had 2 young children from his previous marriage, Emma and Tyler. Their mom had died in a car accident when they were little, and Marcus was raising them alone. When I met them, they were hungry for a mother figure in their lives. "Can you help me with my math homework?" Emma asked me during one of our first dinners together. "Of course, sweetheart." Tyler would climb into my lap while we watched TV, something Casey hadn't done in years. These kids actually wanted me around. They made me feel needed again. Marcus and I got married after dating for about a year. Suddenly, I went from living in a cramped apartment to this huge house with a pool and everything. Emma and Tyler started calling me Mom, and honestly, it felt more natural than anything had in years. But Casey? She got even more distant. Our visits dropped to maybe twice a year, and she barely spoke to me during them. She'd show up, eat whatever I cooked, and leave as fast as possible. "How's college prep going?" I'd ask. "Dad's handling it." "Are you excited about applying?" "I guess." When she finally got into college, I found out through Facebook, not from her directly. David was posting all these proud father pictures while I sat there feeling like I didn't even have a daughter anymore. Once Casey started college, she completely cut me off. I'd call and get voicemail. I'd text and get nothing back. It was like I was dead to her. Years went by like this. Emma and Tyler grew up calling me mom and meaning it. Marcus spoiled me with trips and jewelry and made me feel like I mattered again. But there was always this hole in my heart where Casey used to be. Then one day, my phone rang with Casey's number. I almost didn't answer because I figured it was a mistake. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet?" We met at this coffee shop downtown. Casey looked older, more mature, but also stressed out. She kept fidgeting with her hands and wouldn't make eye contact. "I'm in my 3rd year of college now," she started, "but there's a problem. Dad's business is in trouble, he's having serious financial problems and he can't pay for my tuition anymore." I felt my heart skip a beat. What kind of trouble? He might lose the company, he might go bankrupt. I don't know all the details, but he told me he can't help me finish school. Casey finally looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Mom, I don't want to drop out. I've already finished half my degree. I have nowhere else to turn. Can you help me?" Of course I said yes, how could I not? This was my daughter asking for help, and despite everything that had happened between us, I still loved her more than anything. "Don't worry, Casey, I'll take care of your tuition. You can focus on your studies." The relief on her face was incredible. For the first time in years, she actually hugged me. "Thank you so much, Mom, I really appreciate this." When I got home, I told Marcus about the situation. He was sitting in his office looking over some business reports. "So Casey finally reached out?" he asked. "Her father's in financial trouble, she needs help with college." Marcus nodded. "Of course we'll help her, she's your daughter." I loved him so much in that moment. Marcus had every reason to be annoyed that my ex-husband's problems were now our problems, but he didn't even hesitate. The tuition payments started immediately. Casey was at a private college, so it wasn't cheap, but Marcus and I could handle it. What mattered was that my daughter was back in my life. And she really was back. Casey started calling me regularly, asking how I was doing and telling me about her classes. She'd come over for dinner at least once a week, sometimes staying the whole weekend. Casey seemed to really enjoy spending time with Emma and Tyler. She'd help them with their homework and play video games with Tyler. It felt like we were finally becoming a real blended family. Marcus helped Casey in other ways too. When she was getting close to graduation, he used his business connections to help her find a good job at a marketing firm. The pay was decent for someone just starting out. "I can't believe you did this for me," Casey told him over dinner. "You're Paige's daughter, that makes you family." But I wanted to do more for her. Casey was living in this terrible apartment near campus with 2 roommates who were always partying. The place was loud and dirty, and I could tell it was stressing her out. "I have an idea," I told Marcus one night. "What if we got Casey her own apartment?" "That's a nice thought, but she should probably learn to support herself now that she's working." "I know, but hear me out, we could get her a nice place and just tell her we're paying the rent for a while until she gets settled. We don't have to tell her we bought it outright." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You want to buy her an apartment and pretend it's a rental?" "I want to see how she handles responsibility first. If she takes care of the place and shows she's mature, then maybe later I'll tell her the truth and sign it over to her." That's actually pretty smart, a test run. So that's what we did. I found this beautiful 1-bedroom apartment in a nice part of town. It had hardwood floors and big windows and a little balcony. Casey was thrilled when I showed it to her. "Mom, this place is gorgeous, but I can't afford this." "Don't worry about it, consider it a graduation gift, I'll cover the rent for a while." Casey threw her arms around me. "You're the best mom ever." Those words meant everything to me. After years of feeling like I'd lost my daughter forever, she was finally saying she loved me again. Casey moved into the apartment and seemed to settle in well. She kept the place clean and was always grateful when I'd bring over groceries or little things for the apartment. She'd invite me over for coffee and we'd sit on her balcony talking about her job and her plans for the future. I'm thinking about going back to school eventually, she told me one afternoon. For what? Maybe an MBA, I want to start my own business someday. That sounds wonderful, honey, your stepfather could probably give you some advice about that. Yeah, Marcus is pretty cool, I'm glad you found someone who treats you well. It felt like we were building something real together. Casey would come to family dinners and holiday celebrations. She got along great with Emma and Tyler, and they started looking up to her like a big sister. For the first time since the divorce, I felt like I had my whole family together. Marcus would watch me interact with Casey and smile, knowing how happy it made me. You're glowing, he told me one night after Casey had left from Sunday dinner. I just never thought I'd get her back. She never really left, she just needed time to grow up. I believed that was true. Casey seemed more mature now, more appreciative of everything we were doing for her. She'd thank me constantly for helping with her education and her apartment. I know I wasn't the best daughter before, she told me one day. I was young and stupid. But I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done for me. You don't need to apologize, sweetheart, we all make mistakes when we're young. Everything seemed perfect, too perfect, maybe. But I was so happy to have my daughter back that I didn't want to question it. Then Casey started dating this guy named Ryan. She brought him to dinner one night, and he seemed nice enough. He was polite and well-dressed, and Casey seemed really happy with him. Ryan and I have been talking about getting serious, Casey told me a few months later. He's going to propose soon. I was shocked, honey, you've only been dating for 6 months. When you know, right? Besides, his family has money, his dad owns a construction company. Something about the way she said that made me uncomfortable, but I pushed the feeling aside. Casey was an adult now, she could make her own decisions about love and marriage. A few weeks later, Casey called me with the news. Mom, we're engaged. Congratulations, sweetheart, I'm so happy for you. We want to have the wedding next year. And Mom, I was hoping you could help us plan it. And maybe help with some of the costs? Here we were again, my daughter needed something, and she was coming to me for help. But this time felt different. This time, it felt like she was asking because she wanted me to be part of her special day, not just because she needed money. I threw myself into planning Casey's wedding with everything I had. This was going to be the most beautiful day of my daughter's life, and I wanted it to be perfect. Casey had expensive taste, I'll give her that. She wanted the fanciest venue in town, the most exclusive catering company, and a dress that cost more than some people's cars. Every time she showed me something she liked, I just smiled and said we'd make it work. The wedding planner we hired was this woman named Patricia who specialized in high-end events. Casey would drag me to these meetings where we'd go over every tiny detail. The flowers alone were going to cost $8,000, but Casey insisted she wanted white orchids flown in from Hawaii. Marcus started getting worried about the costs. One night after Casey had left from another planning session, he sat me down in our living room. Honey, I need to talk to you about this wedding budget. Even for me, this is getting pretty extreme. The catering bill alone is $40,000. The venue is another $30,000. And that's before we even talk about the dress, the flowers, the photographer, the band. I felt defensive, this is my only daughter, Marcus. And we've only recently started having a good relationship again. I want her to have everything she dreams of. But Paige, if Emma or Tyler were getting married, would I really spend this much? That hit me hard because he was right. This wedding was going to cost more than most people's houses. But I couldn't bear the thought of disappointing Casey again. I'd already missed so many years of her life. Please, Marcus, let me do this for her. I promise I'll be more reasonable in the future. He sighed and agreed, but I could tell he wasn't happy about it. The weird thing was, as the wedding planning got more intense, Casey started becoming harder to reach. She used to call me every few days, but now when I called her, she'd either not answer or say she was too busy to talk. When she did come over for planning meetings, she seemed distracted and impatient. She'd barely eat the dinners I made and would leave as soon as we finished going over wedding details. She'd become almost businesslike with me, only interested in discussing wedding arrangements and costs. 3 weeks before the wedding, I realized I hadn't seen the final guest list or seating arrangements. I wanted to make sure my family and Marcus's business partners would have good seats, and I needed to coordinate with my relatives who were traveling from out of state. I called Patricia, the wedding planner, and asked her to send me the information. She was being evasive, which wasn't like her. Patricia was usually very thorough about sharing details. I decided to drive to her office the next day. When I walked in, she looked nervous to see me. "Mrs. Matthews, I wasn't expecting you. I just wanted to review the final arrangements. The guest list, the seating chart, all of that." "Well, that information is confidential." I stared at her. "Confidential? I'm paying for this entire wedding." "Yes, but the bride specifically requested that this information not be shared." Now I was getting angry. "Patricia, I have written you checks for over $100,000. I think I have the right to see who's coming to the wedding I'm paying for." After I threatened to ruin her business reputation, Patricia reluctantly showed me the documents. What I saw made my blood run cold. My name wasn't on the guest list. Neither was Marcus's name, or Emma's, or Tyler's. None of my relatives were listed. Someone had drawn big red X's through every single name I'd submitted. And in the middle of the page, in Casey's handwriting, were the words, "Do not admit." Patricia explained that Casey had planned for us to show up and be turned away by security in front of everyone. I immediately called Casey, my hands shaking with rage and heartbreak. "Casey, what the hell is this guest list? Why aren't me and my family on it?" "Mom, you need to mind your own business. It's my wedding and I'll invite whoever I want. I'm paying for your wedding. I've spent over $100,000. You're just giving me back what you failed to give me all these years." "What are you talking about? I paid child support for years. I paid for your college. You didn't try hard enough when I was young. I had to stay with Dad because you were poor and couldn't give me what I needed." I felt like she'd slapped me. "Casey, I tried to keep our relationship going. You're the one who barely wanted to see me. It's your fault I had to choose Dad. You failed as a mother, and now you're just my ATM. I only need you to pay for my wedding, then you and all your relatives can stay away forever." She hung up on me. I sat there staring at my phone, completely destroyed. The next day, I called Patricia and told her to cancel everything. I didn't care about the deposits or the contracts. I was done being used. But I wasn't finished yet. I remembered that Casey and Ryan were living in the apartment I'd bought for her. The apartment she thought was just a rental. I waited until I knew they'd both be at work, then I went over there with a locksmith. We changed all the locks while I packed up their belongings. Every piece of clothing, every book, every personal item went into boxes. I arranged for everything to be delivered to David's address. Let him deal with his precious daughter's tantrum. When I got home, Marcus was waiting for me in the kitchen. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Like I finally stopped being a fool. A few hours later, my phone started ringing. It was Casey, and she was screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You can't do this to me. You ruined my wedding. You threw me out of my apartment. You said I wasn't your mother anymore, Casey. So now you can figure things out without me." I hung up and turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I felt free. The next morning, David called me. I could hear the anger in his voice before he even said hello. "Paige, what the hell did you do to Casey? She's hysterical, she can't stop crying. You've completely destroyed her wedding plans. She destroyed them herself when she decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. You're being dramatic, she's just a young woman planning her wedding." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "David, she was going to have security turn me away at the door of the wedding I paid for. She wanted to embarrass me in front of everyone after I spent over $100,000. There was silence on the other end of the line. "That can't be true. Ask her yourself, or better yet, ask the wedding planner." David hung up without saying goodbye. I figured that was the end of it, but I was wrong. Marcus supported whatever I wanted to do, which meant everything to me. Emma and Tyler were confused about why Casey wasn't coming around anymore, but they accepted my explanation that sometimes adults have disagreements that can't be fixed. For about a week, things were quiet. Then Casey started calling and texting nonstop, but I blocked her number. I thought she'd eventually give up and move on. I was wrong about that too. One night, Marcus and I were woken up by this horrible crashing sound. We ran to the front of the house and saw that every single window facing the street had been smashed. There was glass everywhere, and spray paint all over the side of our house. The security cameras caught everything. It was Casey, using a baseball bat to destroy our property. She'd also spray-painted nasty words about me and Marcus all over the exterior walls. In the morning, we discovered she'd slashed the tires on both our cars that weren't parked in the garage. Marcus was furious. That's it, she's dangerous. What if Emma or Tyler had been near those windows when she broke them? He was right. Casey had crossed a line from being selfish and manipulative to being genuinely destructive and potentially violent. We filed a police report and pressed charges. Casey was arrested 2 weeks before what would have been her wedding date. David bailed her out the next day, but the damage was done. Ryan's parents called me, wanting to know what was happening. Their son hadn't explained anything to them about the cancelled wedding or Casey's arrest. I told them the whole truth. How Casey had used me for money, planned to humiliate me, and then vandalized our house when I stopped enabling her behavior. Ryan's mother was horrified. 2 days later, Ryan broke up with Casey and demanded she return his family's engagement ring. That's when things got even worse. Casey showed up at Ryan's workplace and had a complete meltdown. She was screaming, throwing things at people, and smashing computer equipment. The security guards had to call the police, and Casey was taken to a psychiatric hospital for evaluation. David called me that evening, and this time his voice was different. He sounded defeated. "Paige, we need to talk. Can you meet me somewhere?" We met at a coffee shop downtown. David brought Jennifer with him, and I immediately understood where Casey had learned some of her behavior. Jennifer was rude to the waitress, complained about everything, and acted like the world owed her something. "Can we talk without Jennifer?" I asked David. Jennifer got offended and stormed out, which was fine by me. "David, Casey needs professional help, real help." "I know," he said quietly, "I've been blind to how she's been acting." Jennifer kept telling me that Casey was just being normal, that all young women are demanding. This isn't normal, and you know it. What do you think we should do? Private psychiatric treatment, long term. She needs to understand what she's done and why it's wrong. David agreed, and we found a good private facility that specialized in personality disorders and behavioral problems. I visited Casey twice during her first month there. The first visit was a disaster. She screamed at me, called me terrible names, and threw pillows at me. She blamed me for ruining her life and said she hated me. The second visit wasn't much better, but at least she didn't throw anything. On my third visit, something was different. Casey was sitting quietly in the common room, and when she saw me, she started crying. "Mom, I think something is really wrong with me." "What do you mean, honey?" "The doctors here have been talking to me about my behavior. About how I treated you and Marcus and Ryan. I keep thinking about it, and I realize I've done terrible things. For the first time in years, my daughter sounded like the little girl I used to know. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm sorry for using you for money. I'm sorry for planning to embarrass you at my wedding. I'm sorry for breaking your windows and ruining your house." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Casey, do you really understand what you did?" "I think so. I think I learned to be manipulative and mean. I think I learned it from Jennifer, and I think I was angry at you for things that weren't really your fault." "What do you mean?" "You didn't abandon me, Mom. I chose to live with Dad because I thought he had more money. And when his money ran out, I came to you because I knew you'd help me. But I never really wanted a relationship with you. I just wanted what you could give me." Hearing her say it out loud was painful, but also relieving. At least now she understood the truth. Do you think you can get better? I want to try. The doctors say I need to stay here for at least 6 more months, maybe longer. But I want to get better, Mom. I want to be the daughter you deserve. I squeezed her hand. I want that too, sweetheart. It's been 4 months since that conversation. Casey is still in treatment, and she's making progress. She writes me letters now, real letters where she talks about what she's learning about herself and how she wants to change. I don't know if she'll ever be completely better, but for the first time in years, I have hope that my daughter might come back to me. The real Casey, not the manipulative person she became.